pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're up to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is to approve the June 21, 2022 Olmsted County Board Minutes, proclaim July 17 through 23, 2022 as pretrial, probation, parole supervision week, approve the gambling permit for Stewartville Sportsman's Club, and approve MnDOT's agreement to advance federal funds for SP 055-604-018 and SP 055-644-002, and that's County Roads 4 and 44, Cassar Roads 4 and 44. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. The regular agenda, discussion decision items. First one, informational, Olmsted County mid-year priority update. Mr. Geeson, you have that?
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners. Pete Geeson, Deputy Administrator with Physical Development. Today we're continuing with Tony Hill presenting 3 priorities for you related to maintaining our built-in natural environments, and then we'll have Mary Heft and Ben Griffiths providing 2 priority updates on maintaining the foundations of our democracy. So I'll hand it to Tony first.
Welcome, Mr. Hill.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. As Pete indicated, I'm just here to present the environmental resources 3 priorities for this coming year. Next slide, Claire. Priority number 1 is the ash utilization project for the Class 5 aggregate. This just breaks down the time frame that we were working with. In 2021, you can see the MPC approval process that we went through. In 2022, we selected a contractor for the project. And later this fall, we'll be doing the demonstration project out at the Kalmar landfill. Next slide, Clara. Thank you. I just wanted the beneficial use, again, is for the Class 5 aggregate to be used for roadway subgrade. And this is just a picture of illustrating that. You can see the 1.5 inch bituminous wear course, and then the 2 inch bituminous binder course. And then what we're looking at is the 12 inch ash amended Class 5 aggregate. So the goals are to reduce the amount of ash landfill, extend the operational lifespan of the ash disposal area, reduce the amount of virgin material being used for Class 5 road aggregate, and to help our sustainability efforts in environmental resources.
Hey, Tony, that's just the bottom ash, right?
So it's the bottom ash, correct.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hill, how will we know if this is successful? What's the benchmark of measuring success?
Yeah, so there's a couple of benchmarks. Is that we're doing it at the Kalmar landfill because we have the monitoring wells out there, so we can see if there's any type, which we don't believe because of what they're doing up in Polk County. They haven't seen anything, and so the environmental aspect will be able to measure if there's any type of leaching from the material, which, like I said, we don't anticipate. And the next one is the construction. You know, is the material able to hold? And so that's the second part of it. And so that's what we're looking at.
So the measure would be no environment, and what's the time span for measuring?
So we're doing, right now it's a year that we're looking at. And like I said, up in Polk County, they've been doing this for about 15 years. And so that's why the MPC basically fast-tracked our process, is because it's been done in the state.
Yeah, they've got a lower run rate up in Polk County.
Yeah.
They've been looking at this.
Yeah, so they're doing it up in Polk County. They're using it on their roadways currently. And so that's why the MPCA, we're able to fast track it. But we just wanted to make sure that, a year we demonstrate that it's feasible. And so.
And then in terms of the durability of the road itself, are we comparing it to other roads that, will this get more traffic, less traffic? I mean, how do we make that comparison?
Yeah, and maybe if I can turn to Kay, she's the road expert, so.
Morning, Commissioners, Kay Beniak, Public Works. So as Tony alluded to, we'll monitor that roadway. We'll do some testing on it with what we call a falling weight deflectometer, where we load it and you can tell how far down. We can also do ground penetrating radar, which also tests the strength of it. We'll measure for rutting, so we'll monitor all that kind of stuff. The advantage that the Kelmer landfill has is that it's got some really heavy traffic, obviously. So that'll really give us a good measure of how that base performs then. Yep.
Thank you.
I assume Polk County's experience to date has been good. No deterioration, lifespan looks the same, and so on.
Correct.
So that's the beauty of it.
So in a year, if it's very successful, in a year from now, you'll be looking to do this on county roads?
I think so. I think we'll probably start out small. You know, I mean, a year or two will give a good indication, but it's going to be like that 5 and 10 years out that really. So, you know, if we have a good success for the first couple, we'll put it on another county road that deems acceptable, and we'll just, you know, kind of progress as we go. Yep.
Thanks.
Contractors are pretty interested in using this material.
Correct.
Yeah.
Matthew's been working really well with them.
At some point, I mean, assuming it's successful, would we get paid for it? I mean, we're not gonna make money at it, but would they pay us for it, or is it a freebie?
We hope so. We hope so. And that's hopefully with part of this demonstration, you know, just to determine what those costs are. So,
Because I mean, it's gonna save them. We're not trying to make money, okay?
Right.
But I mean, it saves them money from
Right.
pulling up aggregate out of the ground.
Right.
Makes the
Thank you.
project less expensive.
And the 4th of July.
So priority number 2 is, of course, our materials recovery facility. We have a $10 million state bonding request that we're still waiting to hear on. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll hear some good news. Again, it's a 30,000 square foot addition to the OWF. We'll be receiving, sorting, and preparing recyclables for manufacturing. And then also, it improves our fuel and eventually reduces our emissions from the facility. The reasons why, growth in our region, we're looking at this as being a regional facility, improve our local recycling rates. Regional recycling option, right now we currently don't have a MRF in the region, and this would allow us to have one and allow other counties to use it. The environmental benefits, less hauling, less greenhouse gas emissions from the hauls going up to material recovery facilities in the Twin Cities. We delay expansion of our current facilities, the OWF, as well as the ash cells. And then the future options, maybe food waste as being an opportunity for the materials recovery facility to separate out and use in a different capacity. And then number 3, our solid waste visioning for this board. We want to recognize the past success of our programs. We want a vision of where we can be in the future, identify long-term solutions for waste, and we want to rethink waste as a resource, specifically around yard waste, food waste, wood waste, and we talked a little bit about C&D, or construction and demolition waste, and physical development this morning. And so the next board meeting, we'd like to do a visiting session on what that looks like. So those are our 3 priorities for environmental resources. Any questions?
From the groups you're involved with, Tony, do you see the legislature moving towards setting recycling rates accepted, like setting a floor?
I do think it's coming. I think especially around food waste, you know, because of the greenhouse gas emissions and landfills that it creates, and I think that they're going to eventually set limits on food waste recycling, food waste diversion. So I think that that's coming in the legislature.
Okay.
You see it in other states.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Is there another one? Here we come.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mary Blair Heft. I'm your newest Director of Property Records and Licensing, and I get to highlight the redistricting, and it's the extension of maintaining the foundations of democracy. The 2020 census redistricting was completed, and the team entered more than 40,000 more than 40,000 addresses were impacted by the redistricting. As many of you may know, much of it had to be manually entered because of the statewide voter registration system wasn't matching with what we had put in there. It took over 8 days, just over 8 days to do that, and all that was being done while we did a special primary election at the same time due to the death of Congressional District 1, Hagedorn. We had approximately 12.67% turnout for that election, which is pretty good for a special. We have the statewide primary coming up in August 9th. The absentee voting has already started at the end of June. The general election will be held November 8th with absentee voting again starting at near the end of September. So that's it. The team did a super great job. Katie and Luke led the team, and they put in extra hours to get the districting done, and we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Very nice. I'd like
Thanks,
to say
Katie.
that
Thanks, Luke.
the video that was produced by the elections office and by Olmsted County that shows the voting process opens it up for everybody, I think was really well done. And I think it's really important that hopefully the people in Olmsted County will take a look at that if they have questions about the election process and how open it is and how people can see what's going on. They can ask questions. So it's really well done to make sure that we assure the people in Olmsted County that we have fair and open elections. So very nice. Okay. Also, I did the in-person early voting. Very simple process. Very easy to get done. Fill out the information. Make sure that you prove who you are when you're voting, and it's all recorded. So it's a great process. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chair, do we not have a report on the upcoming primary and congressional? We have some handouts in our packet.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Mr. Chair, we have actually, Ben's going to give a quick update on the redistricting process overall as our last board priority. And then Katie and Luke will come up as the next agenda item for the overall update on elections. So Ben, if you want to touch on the redistricting.
Oh, it's already done. Clear, it's all over it. All righty. So, as part of the board priorities, the foundations of democracy is one of those. Building for the planning department, that involves redistricting, and I know that's a favorite subject of the county commissioners. But just for informational, every 10 years following the census, all jurisdictions are required to redistrict. And in our case, the county went last, and I like to think that they saved the best for last. So we went last. This was the first year in, I don't know how many years, over 40 years, that we didn't do this concurrently with the city of Rochester, as we've been a consolidated planning department. So it's a little different this year. We did work closely with the city clerk's office during this process, and we kept up with what they were doing, and they kept up with what we were doing, and it was a very, very good process, and we kept each other informed. So at the end of March, the planning department received the information from the city of Rochester city clerk's office, and we began a redistricting process. And in less than 2 weeks, approximately 2 weeks' time, our GIS staff put together 6 maps that y'all reviewed and were presented to the public. And we also, the county attorney's office had hired an attorney which specialized in redistricting and election law. And all 6 of the maps that we prepared passed both constitutional and statutory muster. So we're very proud of that. At the end of the day, the county board selected one, which is the map that you see in front of us on the display. And that will be our redistricting map for the next 10 years. So With that, I'm extremely proud of the work that our GIS staff did. They were under a very tight deadline, received the information at the very last minute, and with the census data still being slowly released since the 2020 count, did an excellent job of working through that. So I can't say enough about the work that they put in and made sure that everything was done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, is it Katie or Mary? I'm not sure. So thank y'all very much.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. My name is Catherine Smith, Associate Director of Property Records and Licensing. Here today to speak on behalf of elections, talking about our upcoming May 24th special primary and how that impacts our team and kind of what that ballot is going to look like. Thank you for pulling it up. If you go next slide, Clara. The first item that you see is our sample ballot. I happened to just pull one at random, but it is Byron. So there you go, Mary. We pulled out Byron's ballot for our sample. The front side of it looks kind of normal for the state primary races. It is one column for each of the 4 major political parties, and voters will get to choose to vote in one of those columns. The back side of the ballot is both the nonpartisan races as well as that Congressional District 1 general election. So voters get to vote one column on the front and all races on the back side of the ballot. You'd go next slide. So the special election to fill the vacancy through January of 2023 is on the nonpartisan side of the ballot. It's not a separate ballot. For electing the person who's going to serve beginning the term in January and then moving from there forward, that also went to primary, so that race is on there as well on the front side of the ballot where voters get to vote in one column. And then we've gotten some questions. This is kind of our FAQs that we've been kind of working with voters. You do only have to go to one polling site on election day to vote in both the state primary and the Congressional District 1 special election, since they are on that same ballot. For our challenges for Congressional District 1, number 1 was training. We did start our election judge training on June the 10th. That opens up the brand new cycle for the 2022 election cycle and goes through June of 2024. So we have had that opportunity to interface with all of the judges that are going to be serving in the polling place on election day. So that afforded us the opportunity to be able to answer their questions and describe exactly what this ballot's going to look like to them. The next challenge for us will be the canvass of the special election. It actually has to occur the very next day. And it also has to, for that purpose, has to be a separate abstract that will create a separate from the state primary abstract. Those we've already planned and prepared for. It shouldn't be an additional cost. It'll just be some additional hours for Luke and I. Thank you. That is all that I had prepared, but I'm here to answer any questions that still remain.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Smith, do we have a role with the canvas? Is county board expected to participate in the canvas? I saw something in some newsletter and I'm not informed on that. Do we have a role?
Yes, 2 board members, up to 2 are.
Just 2?
Yes,
Okay,
and
so
I worked that out with Lisa already, I believe.
Okay.
But I'll double check and make sure that everyone's aware of that.
The other question I have is many counties around the state are experiencing concern from the electorate about voting integrity or elections integrity. Have we been experiencing some of that through your office? I have not had any constituents contact me, but I'm wondering if there's been some concerns expressed.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. We've received some phone calls and some emails that are a little bit negative. It just hurts inside because I know how much my team really cares, and I know all of the things that we do in the background to just ensure the integrity of our process here at Olmsted County. Like Vice Chair had mentioned earlier, we did do that in video concerns with the different pieces of integrity that we've published. We had an informational meeting where we invited the parties and some other interested groups out to do an informational session for them. So we really are responding with transparency.
And we won't have the concerns we had last year about some of the judges representing partisan interests. We have the balance that we need.
Yes, we are in balance.
Okay, great.
Any other questions?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, is there another one? No? All right, so then we will move on to the next agenda item. The Administrator's Showcase, County Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Oss from Olmsted County Attorney. Pleasure to be here today. It's my opportunity to do the annual What's Happening in the County Attorney's Office. So I'll give you a little bit of a snippet of some of the things that are going on up there and invite you to ask questions or have other discussion if you wish. Probably the most significant item to talk about is what's happening with the backlog in the cases. I'm going to show you three different printouts. These are the most recent printouts we have about where we stand in the backlog. The backlog is actually defined as our case numbers, our filings in the court above where we were in March of 2020. So that's how they're measuring it. So they take the number of cases we had filed in March of 2020 and say how many more do we have right now. This is a graph, excuse me, that describes kind of where we've been. And on the top left, now this, we're looking at felonies here. So you see a little arrow, it says criminal felony there. These are the felony cases. The number 184 is what the current backlog stands at. But if you see right below that, there's a graph that's got a big dip in it and then it kind of flattens out in a little bit more of a dip. And that shows you the progress we've made since November of 2021. In November of 2021, we had a relatively significant settlement opportunity. We spent weeks, literally weeks, working with various defense attorneys, with the courts to set this all up. And it was one of the first opportunities to really have a meaningful opportunity to come into the courtrooms together and resolve cases. And we had a significant resolution. And so that's where you see that big dip. And then it kind of goes up and it kind of gradually goes down. And I guess that would describe then, you know, the filings we've put in, but also we've been doing a ton of jury trials. We've done a lot of jury trials. We've had a lot scheduled. Probably the most significant way to resolve cases, though, is to actually get in the courtroom. And sometimes scheduling 10 jury trials and having 9 of them all end up in pleas is a good thing. It kind of makes you wonder why it takes us to get to that point of a jury trial, but that's just kind of the nature of our work. The Supreme Court has set a guideline or an objective of reducing the backlog by 20% every quarter, hoping, and this is statewide, and hoping to have it all resolved by June of 2023. So as we look at these numbers, the 184 is our current backlog of felonies. There's a number down at the bottom, and it says July 2022, we should be at 226. So we've, as far as felonies, we're sitting in a good spot right now, even though we've got 184 excess felony cases sitting out there. Let's just move ahead, and the other category that we are looking or tracking very closely is gross misdemeanors. And so I've also highlighted here a significant settlement opportunity that we had in, I think it was in March. Again, same type of process. We worked hard, spent weeks trying to get everybody together, finally got into a courtroom in March. And again, the mystery of all this is really getting everybody into the courtroom together. And we had dramatic settlements there and dramatically reduced our backlog. We're still above where we should be in July, and that's probably mostly because of the filings we've had. But we made considerable progress, and we're talking about trying to create some sort of an effort going forward. This is just the combined of those two. So again, you see on the left in that graph, you see the big dip, which was the felonies. In the March area, you see how the totals dropped again because of the grosses. We're sitting basically right about where we should be for July in order to achieve this objective. What concerns me is where you see the line is starting to tail up a little bit. That represents our filings. We're seeing a lot of filings coming in. We've got a lot of cases yet to file. Crime hasn't stopped out there. And so, we're continuing to do what we can. One thing I'm very cautious about is we're not going to continue to do all these massive settlement efforts. We're not going to have fire sales or things like that. Public safety is a significant issue in our community, and we need to make sure that the people that are out there causing issues with public safety should know that they're not going to get off. So while we had those massive settlement efforts, they were significant in that we hadn't been into the courtrooms together for such a long time. Now that we kind of are in the courtrooms, trying to create these fire sales or something like that just simply can't happen in the future. So we're not going to see those significant dips. We just need to get back to business as usual. Some more things about this whole backlog and what's happening in the courts. We are doing jury trials in both the annex and in courtroom 7. I will say that recently, in some discussions with the judges, they're trying hard to use courtroom 7 more, and that's really in an effort to give corrections some breathing room. You all know that corrections has been displaced over there, and it's crowded. When we're trying to do a jury trial, we're starting one this morning over there. We're trying to do a jury trial. We've got all those jurors. We've got our witnesses, and corrections is trying to do business as usual. It's crowded. And so where we have that opportunity, if we only have one trial going on, the courts are trying to move those over to courtroom 7 in this building to try and give a little bit of breathing room over there. Also, in particular, if it's an in-custody defendant, it also is a lot easier for the Sheriff's Department to provide security here than it is to provide security over there. So they're trying, if they can, to do the trials over here, but we're trying to also run 2 calendars at the same time. There was an order that came out on June 6, 2022 from the Judicial Council that gave some scheduling flexibility back to the local jurisdictions. Up to that point, we'd been having to abide by whatever the Chief Justice's order said as far as what we can do in person, what has to be done on a virtual platform. And as I said before, just getting everybody back into the courtroom is the biggest element, the biggest piece of the puzzle to getting our cases to kind of resolve. We continue to request more and more in-person hearings. There still is one category of hearings that the courts in my office are kind of at odds with, as whether they should be in person or they need to be on a Zoom platform. It's called a default omnibus hearing. In the past, we've settled up to as much as 50% of those calendars because we're in person. But if it's a felony case and there's a resolution reached, we can't take a plea on a felony case on a virtual platform. We need to have that person that defendant in person in the courtrooms. So we continue to have a little bit of gnashing about whether that can be in person or not. I read the order very liberally, and it says the courts, the local jurisdiction has that flexibility. Our judges here and at the district level don't read it quite that liberally, and they say that one, by definition, needs to stay on a virtual platform. So we continue to work on that.
So that's not statutorily.
No.
Is that what I'm hearing?
No, it's
an
coming.
Interpretation.
It's coming from this Judicial Council order that gives some vague kind of definition, and then it's how we interpret it. As I said, though, the virtual platform is good for some things, and in custodies has been one of those great opportunities for us to have a better opportunity to keep our security in the ADC, keep the defendants down in the ADC. They use a Zoom platform for those first appearances. It makes it a whole lot easier for the Sheriff's Department to provide security, and we also move through those calendars a whole lot faster. So Zoom is good for some things, not for everything. I do want to point out that drug court is back 100% in person. Our drug court, one of probably the most important piece of drug court is that interaction, that personal interaction between the judge and the client. And when we had to go to a virtual drug court, we lost that. And for almost 2 years, we didn't have that opportunity to be in person, and we're now back. And it's made a huge difference. I've participated in it from our office. I've watched it. It makes a huge difference for those people to actually stand before the judge and have that personal interaction. It really does make a difference. I will say that our office monitors the ADC population fairly closely. We want to make sure that our longest serving detainees are the ones that are getting into the courtrooms. We've tried to make that a priority. I know the courts are trying to make that a priority and make sure the most serious cases are there. Our recent, in fact, I just got the email this morning. We get a weekly update of who's in the ADC, and about 2/3 of the detainees that are in the ADC right now were booked after May 1st of 2022. So we're kind of turning over that population. We've still got at least one really long-term detainee down there. I think he's on for trial next week. But we're trying to work through those most serious people and trying to make sure we're turning that population over. We've also worked really closely with law enforcement and corrections on juvenile detainees. I know during the pandemic we've had some struggles with both Dakota and I think Anoka is the other place we go as to whether they have the bed space available when we need it. And so there's been some long rides, I think, for some people. But we work really closely with law enforcement and corrections at the time of the arrest to make sure that we're sending somebody, a juvenile, to detention that absolutely needs to be in detention. And so our numbers, I think, that we send up there are relatively low. But at the same time, we're trying to make sure that we're being mindful of public safety. I do want to call out that we worked, Tom Gort in my office, worked with corrections and child protection to create a family violence initiative. And it's that conversation, usually around domestic violence types of cases. Those would be the mandatory arrest type things in the past. And they've worked really closely together to find out other alternatives to detention for juveniles in that. And it's actually created some statewide interest. I know Tom and, I've lost her name, presented at, not Cindy, Amber, probably, might have been Amber, presented at our County Attorney Association statewide conference on that. I know in particular that Sherburne County has reached out to us and trying to mimic this. And so it's been a great program. And like I said, it's created some statewide interest. Commissioner Cascaden.
Mr. Ostrom, I was in a conversation recently where it was asserted that juvenile court, there's an initiative around juvenile court and training for judges around juvenile detention and juvenile issues. And I know that there's going to be kind of a letter coming to the County Attorneys Association, but in the conversation I listened in on, it was asserted by a retired county attorney that we should be viewing juvenile court as a specialty court and having particular training for all the personnel, including the judges and county attorney staff that are involved with juvenile court. And that was a new idea to me, and I just wondered what your insights might be, and if we've had a de facto juvenile court in Olmsted County. I don't really know. So what's your reaction to that proposal that seems to be gaining some momentum?
I appreciate the thought. It's great comment. The last part of your question is, have we had a de facto juvenile court? In fact, we really have for probably longer than I've been around. There was an initiative years ago for one judge, one family, or one family, one judge. And so years ago, they started assigning one judge exclusively to courtroom 2, which is our juvenile courtroom. Judge Birnbaum, Judge Jacobson both spent years in there. Judge Lund has been the most recent judge in there. He's about to retire. And Judge Allen is going to go into there as well. So we've kind of had this de facto juvenile judge. And I wouldn't say necessarily the other participants, like my attorney and public defender, have been specially trained, but they've been in there forever. And so they do have great experience. And there's been a lot of training along that lines too. It is very much a specialty practice. When you're dealing with detention, that's obviously a very significant event for a juvenile, much more so than an adult. What's happening with the family involved as well. The child protection side of it also is very much a specialty practice. So it's something that more and more jurisdictions need to try and specialize in. But of course, with 87 counties in this state, probably 75 of them are very small counties and have 1 or 2 judges, and they don't really have that specialty opportunity. And there's probably a great opportunity there as well. I'm not sure if I answered your question or your thoughts, but we kind of do that, but we don't necessarily call it out as a juvenile court.
Thank you. That gives me the next piece of information I needed. Thanks.
Thanks. I just wanted to touch on a couple other things on our strategic priorities. These are the most important things in our office. The number one thing has been organizational integrity, and that has a very broad meaning. We've talked about it in terms of attorney succession planning, recognizing that we've got some significant institutional knowledge in some of our staff, and to prepare for those and to make sure that we're preserving that stuff. We just have come through the retirement of Tom Kelly. He spent 27 years doing child support enforcement. Incredible amount of institutional knowledge there that we needed to capture as Tom went into retirement, and we moved somebody else into that space. Making sure that we've got career paths for our staff and that they have that opportunity for continued growth. The concept of whether there's a glass ceiling and what can we do about it. Have we finally gotten big enough that we can do some actual specialization of our attorney assignments? Creating a fellowship. We know like professors go off and have fellowships, or doctors. Could we also do something similar like that in our office with some of our staff? Create a fellowship that also then creates that specialization. But most importantly, make sure that we have that integrity in all the decisions we make, that we're doing the right thing. A couple other strategic priorities we've got: measuring our work. We now are a year and a half into our new case management system. We're finally to a point where there's enough data in there that we can start mining it out and learning more about our cases. We're doing more and more on community outreach and engagement. I'll show you a video at the end here, but we've posted and created a lot of videos on social media about mental health, sentencing, missing children, domestic violence a few times, sex trafficking, things like that. So we're trying to reach out and help teach the community more about what we do. Community-informed prosecution is just understanding our community and understanding why some of these things are happening in our community, and also understand the impact of what we do on our local community and the various little pieces of our community. And then continuing to keep our staff engaged in meetings, whether it's our office-wide meetings or team meetings or even one-on-ones. Some other priorities, we've taken a pretty hard stand on gun violence. We're going to make sure that we're getting those mandatory sentences on gun crimes, gun violence crimes. We want to partner with the schools, continue to partner with them to make sure that there's a safe space. The school is a safe space for kids to come and to give them an opportunity to learn, and to assist the schools in helping the kids attend their school or classes. And then a big one for me is just to provide that leadership to end what I call the moral holiday. There's all this social conversation out there, and people have this sense that they can say anything to anybody. That's one of the concerns I have in the schools, is that we need to bring a level of decorum and respect back to our schools. This concept of this moral holiday. I saw Brent kind of grin a little bit when I said that, because I've got it posted on my desk, and people are getting tired of hearing me say it, but I feel pretty strongly about the moral holiday.
Is that equivalent to civility, or yeah?
Basically, incivility. This people think they can come up and say anything to anybody without regard to who they are or position they hold or age, or respect for elders, all that kind of stuff.
Consequences? What a novel idea.
There's a whole lot of other things we could stand here and talk about. I could spend all day in front of you guys, and if there's anything up there that piques your interest, feel free to ask a question. But there's just a lot of the significant things that are going on in our office. So I'm hoping this will play, and I'm not sure if I have to hit play or.
Is this Judge Judy?
No, this is a video that we put together with the help of the PAC team, Rachel Gick, and I've always had this idea that I wanted to be able to do a virtual walkthrough of our office, a virtual tour of our office, because nobody gets into my office unless we unlock the doors and let them in. So many of you have rarely been in the office up there. We've talked about using it in form of recruiting. It's difficult to draw professionals down to Olmsted County when they could be, all the law schools are up in Minneapolis. And so use it for recruiting, other things, but it's really just to kind of explain who we are and what we do. And it's about 2 minutes long, and Clara, maybe if you could hit play, please. Hello, I'm Olmsted County Attorney Mark Ostrom. Welcome to the Olmsted County Attorney's Office. A strong justice system starts with the people whose job it is to fight for the rights of victims in society.
Public safety is our main goal. We're able to do that through different agencies we work with and different community partners.
I want to do some meaningful legal work, and obviously we work in public safety, we work with law enforcement. This is a pretty easy connection to make between our work and making the community a better place.
We do far more than prosecute crimes. I do a lot of counseling and advising of clients. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that help the community members of Olmsted County receive the services that they've come to rely on or not even have to think about. Things like elections work or data processes. One of my colleagues does a lot of work with the Parks Department, so making sure there are places for our citizens to go and enjoy themselves on the weekend or, Grand Park. There's so many different things that happen in this office.
We're dealing with people at the worst parts of their lives a lot of the time, and we're not doing it for the paycheck. We're not doing it for any prestige, but we're doing it because we care enough to want this done.
Well, law enforcement is typically the people we talk to the most. We take what they put in their reports and make those charging decisions, represent the community as a whole.
The prosecutor also gets to see how much they help the victim. That is also rewarding.
We help the most vulnerable members of our community when they're going through tough times, and that really can be anyone.
We're just trying to make our goal and our mission of public safety come to life.
People think that we represent victims or law enforcement, but we technically don't have a client. We represent the state of Minnesota. You're only one bad day away from needing help from someone with Olmsted County.
For more information about the services provided by the Olmsted County Attorney's Office, please visit olmstedcounty.gov. Just a very short snippet, and again, I thought it was one of those things that was very well done, and with the assistance of the PAC committee, PAC department, it turned out very well. So I think that's the end of my PowerPoint. So lots of questions.
Thanks.
Nope. Very good.
Thank you
very much.
Appreciate that. All right, we've come to the end of our agenda unless there's anything else. And the next item here would be the board and committee reports. Commissioner Flynn, do you have anything?
No, I just had water quality meetings, Red River, Whitewater in the last couple of weeks. Nothing new there.
Commissioner Cascade?
The Housing Coalition is working on performance indicators that will be used to measure progress in addressing our housing shortage and defining the role of the coalition's role compared to the HRA's role. I think we're making some good progress there. There's going to be a special longer retreat of the coalition. We have a temporary, an interim director, and Joe Marie Morris seems to be moving things along very well. And I think we're making some good progress there. I think that's probably the most significant thing to report on this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Nothing worth. Been pretty slow couple of weeks.
Commissioner Beer?
The only thing, last week we had a open house on Highway 14, County Road 44, and County Road 3. Update, MnDOT was there. I couldn't stand it because they couldn't hear people, so I got up there and kind of did a little presentation. Well, that went pretty good, but I think there is a lot of confusion on what's going to happen. What's going to happen in the interim till we get an interchange there at 44 is the median is going to be closed. So there'll be no more left turns at 7th Street or County Road 44. I mean, it's going to be shut down. You'll be able to go right in, right out. But I don't think, and then the J turns or RCI cuts or whatever we call them are going to go up at 3, and then they're going to be putting cabling in too. I don't think the public in general understands that. The people that were at that meeting, at the end of that meeting, understood what was happening. And our concern from Olmsted County is that we're going to be driving traffic to other roads that may not be able to handle that volume. So it was a pretty good meeting, I think. I don't know, okay, anything else? Okay, that's it.
Okay. Commissioner Podolsky.
No report.
All right. I just want to add comments to Commissioner Beer's statement. I do think that DOT is going to do what DOT wants to do, and it's their decision to close those intersections, not our decision. But I do think that it really puts pressure on DOT because, number one, they've already admitted that it's a dangerous intersection. And so because they've admitted that, then I think it's only logical to assume that they know that they have to do something about those intersections besides closing them, which should help us hopefully get the funding that we need to start the intersection. And I think, Kay, the temporary plan is that maybe we could start in 2024 if the money comes through. So now we'll be talking to DOT where the money's going to come from and when we can possibly do that. Meanwhile, we are proceeding with the land acquisitions and with the planning, the design, correct? Correct. All right. So very good. All right. Thank you very much for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are